Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everyone, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends to UWIHARP's Sexual Health Dialogues. I'm Monique Springer, Project Officer with UWIHARP, and I'm joined today with Ms. Keelia Anderson, our Project Assistant, and Samuel, a technician from UWI's Classroom Technology, and they will be providing some admin and technical support respectively for us today. A very special welcome to our students, staff members, off-campus partners, repeat visitors, and to our new guests. UWIHARP is the HIV sexual health unit at UWI, and we seek to positively influence the sexual and reproductive health and wellness of the university population and wider Caribbean society. Our primary focus is the development of sexual health literacy among the community through programs such as our digital dialogues. These are informal sexual health conversations and will be held during the semester. They include the S-Files discussion series on a wide range of topics and the Shock series, which will focus on sexual health issues among our vulnerable Caribbean populations during COVID-19. You can look out for the flyers on our social media platforms, which include Facebook, Instagram, the UWI app, and also through UWI emails. We do have a few participation guidelines and notices. All mics are muted and the videos are turned off. Q&A will take place after the presentation and the mics will be unmuted as needed. We ask you to post your questions or comments during the presentation in the Q&A chat pod located at the bottom of the screen. We aim to address as many as possible at the end of the presentation. For those questions we couldn't get to, please email them to uwiharp@capehill.uwi.edu before the end of the day, and we will address them shortly afterwards. The session will be recorded, and the recordings will be posted afterwards on our social media platforms, including our YouTube channel, UWIHARP Cave Hill. These will be done without sensitive personal discussions to protect participants' confidentiality. Please note that we cannot guarantee confidentiality in this public forum among participants, so be cautious about what personal information you disclose about yourself and others. It's safer to talk in general terms. Please complete the evaluation form that will be sent to you after the session, and you can suggest topics that you're interested in for us to facilitate. We do have a few rules, some of which were adapted from the HIV 2020 online. UWIHARP's digital dialogues provide a safe space to address a range of sexual health topics using a sex-positive approach. We encourage participants to share their knowledge, experiences, and opinions in a respectful manner. You may disagree with views highlighted today, however, please be respectful of other outlooks, regardless of your own religious or moral beliefs. Let us be mindful in the way we discuss sensitive topics. UWIHARP operates on a zero tolerance policy for any kind of abusive, discriminatory, belligerent, or disparaging comments or actions that may cause distress to presenters and/or participants. Persons who engage in any undesirable behaviors will be immediately removed from the webinar unannounced. UWIHARP follows the first do no harm guiding principle. And today, our discussion, we will be having our shock discussion, sexual health online conversations about COVID-19. And the topic is, how is COVID-19 affecting young people's sexual health? And we have with us today, Mr. Kamal Clarke. He is the Program Associate at the BFPA, formerly known as the Barbados Family Planning Association. He is a psychology graduate at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. And through being associated with the BFPA, Kamal has been the president of its youth arm, the Youth Advocacy Movement, or YAM, the representative of the English and French-speaking Caribbean for the International Planned Parenthood Federation's Youth Network, and most recently, a Women Deliver youth leader. Kamal is a dedicated sexual and reproductive health and rights educator and seeks to educate young people on comprehensive sexuality education, CSE. This is in an effort to equip them with relevant and age-appropriate information about sexuality to allow them to make more informed decisions. Kamal has represented BFPA locally, regionally, and internationally sharing the importance of CSE, as well as championing its inclusion in secondary school curriculum. And today's discussion, we will be looking at some topics which include Kamal's youth partners and youth members and the community that accesses BFPAs and YAM services. And we'll be looking at the lived experiences of young people during the lockdown and curfew periods, BFPA and YAM's responses during the crisis, including successes and challenges, and also lessons learned and any recommendations. We'll be looking also at access, young people's access and to SRH commodities, services, and education. And we will also be looking at human rights protections and violations. And to set the stage for today's discussion, I have some framing thoughts, and it's part of the global chapter on sexual reproductive health during COVID. And it comes from the International Association of Adolescent Health. And they say that one of the consequences that countries have faced during lockdown to prevent COVID-19 is the disappearance of many factors that are protective of adolescents' health. This includes access to schools and communities that commonly link students to peer support and social networks, supportive adults, sexuality education, safe spaces, and health services and products. The loss of these factors will amplify existing vulnerabilities to poor outcomes, including unintended pregnancy and HIV. In countries where HIV prevalence is high, young people are reporting difficulties in obtaining life-saving antiretroviral medication. Adolescents of both sexes may be exposed to a range of abuses and violations of their rights, including sexual, physical, and emotional abuse, or be compelled into transactional sex, including by family members, to generate income for food and other necessities. And in extreme cases, young people may be trapped with abusive partners or other perpetrators of sexual and gender-based violence. I now would like to invite Kamal to share with us some of his experiences with YAM and BFPA during COVID. Over to you, Kamal.
Okay, thank you very much, Monique. Good afternoon, everyone. So I guess I'll just get started. So firstly, I am going to give the definition of sexual health that I am going to be using for the rest of this discussion. So surrounding health, in a sense, health is a relative state of someone's ability to function physically, mentally, and spiritually. And this translates also to sexual health. So this includes the ability to seek sexual and reproductive services, education, and practice safe sex. So with that context, the rest of the discussion would fall under that definition. So before we get deeper into it, I want to do a flashback to the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. So it caught many persons by surprise. So that's not new. And we were generally unprepared for an extended lockdown. So we didn't have really anything in place to really counter the effects, and we had to learn as it went along. So we had public health services that were still remaining open to treat COVID cases, to treat regular cases. But then we had private doctors and non-governmental institutions like BFPA that closed down for a while because, again, we were unprepared. So we didn't know how to move forward with it at first. So this decreased the options for persons who were looking for treatment and services, especially young people. Now, in my discussions with young people recently and over the years, they don't feel as comfortable accessing services from public health institutions for a variety of reasons, but most often because of the treatment that they get. So they don't like the lack of confidentiality, for one. They don't like the customer service. So like they often say that the persons they deal with are rude or they're dismissive, that kind of thing. And they don't really take young people seriously, in a sense. So because of that, young people usually prefer private institutions like BFPA, or for the UE students, they prefer to go to UE, plus UE is free for the students. So even though public health service is free, they would prefer the other alternatives, but those other alternatives at the beginning of the pandemic were shut down. So this means that young people for a while went without sexual health services for the duration of the lockdown. Thankfully, and I'm going to touch on it a little bit later, the FBA quickly determined how to do what we needed to do during the pandemic. There's also the issue of transportation, because as we know, the buses and the vans are running at lower capacity. So persons who had to rely on public transportation couldn't get where they needed to go in a timely manner, or so that also reduced their ability to access their services. So now we have a situation where young people didn't have access to basic sexual health needs, but in some cases, they were still being sexually active with their quarantine partners. So even though they didn't have access to things like condoms, they couldn't get tested, it's like, we're home, we're bored, we don't have anything to do, my partner's here, let's have sex. And we actually read last year that there was an increase in birth rates because of this. Honestly, I don't have official documentation for Barbados, but I know it was a worldwide thing that there were concerns about how the pandemic would affect birth rates. So for YAM specifically, this was a big setback to our CSE programs. So when it comes to our programming, we usually get a request from schools or other organizations to come in and do sessions. But with the pandemic, we weren't getting those requests because persons were obviously trying to figure out how they're going to function with their own organizations at the school. And I'm also going to touch on that a little bit later. So we had reduced sessions and reduced interactions. And there was no room for training because we couldn't have our physical space. And at that time, we didn't know how to utilize Zoom and Google Meet in a way that would make the training efficient. And then on top of all of that, there was also the issue of mental health. So we have lack of human interaction and uncertainty regarding job securities and then means of income. And this will cause persons suffer from anxiety and depression, wondering how they're going to make it through this pandemic. And that was a huge issue, even now. And when we have a situation where everything is moved online, so you are focused on the computer, you are not really blocked from a lot of social media, and you have this information being bombarded onto you all the time, and that is troubling. So you have constant news of COVID cases. So last year, I'm not sure how many of you were in this situation, but I know that like every day you would get the update saying, well, okay, so this is how many cases you have now, how many deaths you have now, and then worldwide news telling you the cases rising and rising and rising. And we didn't have any idea of a vaccine back then. So it was literally, how do we get through this? And all of this is news that we're just bombarded by on a daily basis, to the point that even I actually took a break from social media for quite a while because of that. So this coupled with everything was disastrous on mental health. And then we also had reports of young people committing suicide even this year. And it's an unfortunate situation. And while there could be a lot of various reasons for these suicides that may not be linked to the pandemic, you can safely assume that the pandemic also has a hand in a lot of these situations. So that is what the youth had to deal with 2020, 2021 with that lockdown and this current lockdown. So how did BFPA and YAM respond to this? So like I said, initially, BFPA had to close, and then we had to take time to strategize how we're going to move forward with the pandemic. So we need to find a way to continue to serve our communities while still keeping our own staff safe. And there were times, I know the first 2 or so weeks of lockdown, we would be getting messages from persons trying to figure out when we're going to open and stuff like that. And that fueled our resolve to get back out there quickly, because we realized, yeah, this is needed. Like, we always knew it was needed, but the public response showed us even more, we need to get this thing done. And then eventually we opened on a smaller scale. So we had reduced days and reduced times. So while operating our clinic staff with equipment to keep safe. So I think we opened back then 3 days a week, and we opened from 9 till 2, I think it was, instead of our usual 7:30 to 4:30. So actually, we then took that, what we learned from that last year, and this year we were able to evolve on that. So during the last lockdown that we had, we were open Monday to Friday, 9 till 2 again. So we only took weekends off, but we still had a reduced time. So that's one thing that we learned, and that's one thing that worked for us, thankfully. So we also increased our social media interactions to keep your persons informed. So I'm not sure how many of you follow BFPA on Facebook or on Instagram, but you see that we have daily posts. And then during the pandemic, we increased those posts. We sent out, like, humorous messages, that kind of thing, just to keep people's spirits uplifted. So while we also give information about COVID, give information about sexual health, we wanted to make sure that it's not just all seriousness. So, because everybody was posting seriousness. So, just give a little levity a bit, just have a smile, have a laugh. And then YAM, it was a bit more difficult for us because our programming revolves around our interactions with young people. So we have a curriculum. So we created a physical document with all of the stuff that we teach within schools and everything. But in that document, we never took into account online learning. So we had to find a way to translate all of that information into an online medium, which was very difficult. And even now we still have kinks to work out. So it was very difficult for us. And like I mentioned earlier, we usually get the requests from schools and organizations. And to them, we weren't a priority at the time, because now they had to find a way to put their classes and stuff online as well. They had to figure out Google Meet. So you had teachers trying to figure out how to get this thing working properly. We had organizations trying to figure out how they're going to keep with their programming. So we were no longer a priority. And we have that then situation where we don't have sexual education being delivered to the young people, even though it's needed. And we understand that obviously you need to focus on your own programming first. So that's fine. But we couldn't keep depriving the young people of the information that they really need. So our education, our sexual education started to dwindle, and sex itself didn't dwindle. So we had to find that way. And so we also increased our social media presence. Now, before 2020, YAM's Instagram was probably maybe a post every couple of months. Our Twitter was non-existent, our Facebook was lacking. But in 2020, with the formation of our new executive board and our fantastic PRO, we have reshaped our social media. So if you were to follow YAM now, you will be seeing a lot more posts, a lot more interaction, which is fantastic, right? And so we increased our presence on Instagram for sure, because we noticed that the young people were using Instagram a lot more. And we also started back using our Twitter from late last year, early this year. So I'll plug all of that later on in the presentation. But yeah, so we increased our social media and we increased our interactions. And one of our biggest challenges is still reaching the young people who may not have access to technology. And to this day, we still don't know how to deal with that. So right now, we're just trying to reach as many as we can. And hopefully the information we spread can be spread to them via their friends or whatever. If there's any other better alternative, I am open to hearing, because we still need to evolve. And we also had our partnerships with other groups. So like Barbados Youth Service, they had sessions that they allowed us to come and do sessions with them. We had Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS. So we did a few videos with them and a few Instagram live videos. And of course, UWIHARP as well. So leaning on your partners was definitely a game changer, because while we can get our information out to the people that we have, using partners, we can get our information out further to other people, to other groups. So like the persons in this call right now may not have been able to get the information that I am delivering without UWIHARP. So partnerships, very important. So yeah, so we also experimented with Instagram Live and Zoom and Google Meet, trying to figure out which was the best medium to use to get our information across. So this leads us into what we learned through all of this. So what we learned, so first of all, at BFEA, we define young people as 25 and under. So when we say youth, that is our target demographic, 25 and under. And that's not something we came up with, that's our parent organization, unfortunately. Because of that, I'm not considered youth either, so it's kind of heartbreaking. But regardless, the FEA defines youth as 25 and under. So when we're doing our youth programming, we try to target those, so we have those interactions and we make note of the number of young people we talk to, and we keep a record of that. But when we were doing our updated online activities, we were using Instagram Live. Now, Instagram Live, our Instagram, we have a lot of interactions on our Instagram, and that's fantastic. So we can get our information out there very easily. However, when we're dealing with Instagram Lives, we have no idea who's in the live. So we don't know how old these people are. We don't know if they're male, female, non-binary. We don't know anything about them. We just know that these people are here listening to the content. So while this is good to get the information out, it doesn't help us when we come to recording our interactions. So we decided we can still use Instagram Live because first and foremost, we need the information to get out there. So we still use Instagram Live. But we decided that we needed another better approach when it comes to our sessions, because we can't monitor and evaluate Instagram, but we can talk to young people. We can send the surveys and everything like that to get their feedback on how the session was, what they knew before the session, what they learned after the session. We can do that via Google Meet, we can do that via Zoom. So we learned that, and now we are trying to translate that. So up to recently, we haven't actually had any Zoom meetings, but we've had a lot of Google Meet meetings because of the schools. The schools primarily use Google Meet. So we learned it better from there. What was hard for us, what we didn't realize, and I'm not sure how it works with Zoom, because as I said, we don't use Zoom as often, but when it comes to presenting and using PowerPoint, when you have a slideshow, the slideshow covers the entire screen. So in that case, we can't see who's in the call or anything like that. We're literally just seeing the PowerPoint while the participants are seeing us. So it kind of gets awkward in that sense, because we can't see the chat, so we don't know who's answering questions or anything like that at that time. So basically, we just go by faith. But we tried another thing. So we tried, most of the sessions we set up in the office. So we have our office laptop, and we usually have, whoever is doing the session usually has like their phone or another laptop connected to the Google Meet, so that you have the person presenting, but also seeing chat at the same time. And while that was effective, it was also distracting because you're monitoring two screens at a time. So we switched that. I went back to our original plan, which was 2 facilitators per session. So then you have one person focusing on delivering information and another person focusing on monitoring the conversations that is happening in the chat and everything like that. And that worked. So it decreased the distractions while still allowing us to continue with our interactions. So that is some stuff that we learned, and that's another recommendation that we have here. So it's always best to have a partner. Don't do it by yourself. Also, presentations don't always translate well to online mediums. And that was a lesson that I, for sure, learned early. So we have 6 modules within our curriculum, and we usually start with puberty. Now, with our puberty session, we usually do this drawing with flip chart. So we usually tell them to, like, draw the shape of a male or a female and fill in the changes that would happen in the body. Obviously, you can't really do that properly online. And then, so we had to remove that part. And so then it just became us talking about the changes. And I'm not sure how many of you have interacted with persons via Zoom or Google. When it comes to asking a question, you usually have that long, awkward pause before anybody decides to respond. So usually just they're talking and you just stare at the screen waiting for somebody to respond, and you don't know if anybody's going to respond or not. And then eventually you just decide, okay, well, and then you continue talking. So we learned that and decided to switch to a more discussion based instead of presenting. So like what Monique mentioned earlier, when it comes to setting the tone of what the discussion would be and laying the groundwork of some certain things that you may want answered or stuff like that. So you lay that out there so that the participants already know, okay, so they're going to expect me to respond to certain things. I'm going to have to think about what I might want to say. So we lead with that so that it then becomes more conversational than us presenting something. And in that sense, we get to give the information we want while talking to the participants and getting their feedback at the exact same time. And that worked well when we talked about consent. It worked well when it comes to sexual activity. What other stuff? It works well when we talk about self-esteem. So those 3 topics for sure, we practiced the discussion online and it worked really well for that. YAM also recorded short informational videos. So for our sessions usually last about 30 to 40 minutes, unless we're doing a workshop, in which case we extend the content. So we decided to take each module that we have and break them down even smaller. So then we take the key points from each session and made short informational videos for them. So again, puberty. And this puberty video is on our Instagram right now. So we take, no, sorry, puberty isn't on the Instagram right now. The one on Instagram is a mental health one regarding self-esteem, I believe it is. So taking self-esteem, looking at the main points and delivering it in less than 2 minutes. That we wanted it to be less than 2 minutes so that it's easy to share. So we cut it down into 2 parts. So you can just share it with your friends, put it on your WhatsApp statuses, that kind of stuff. And we found that that worked well as well. I'm not sure if Kelia has the video working, but I can show you the video on Instagram if it works. Another thing that we learned is to keep the presentations short. So the attention span is already short as it is when it comes to delivering sessions in person. But when you're online and you're sitting at a computer, it's even harder. All that glare, just staring directly at a screen is hard. So we try to keep the presentations 30 minutes max. You have time for questions and stuff like that afterwards, but try to keep focus for 30 minutes, ask questions in between, show a short video, that kind of thing. But to just keep the presentation short, because nobody really wants to sit down and stare at a screen for all this time.
Kamal, and thank you so much for your comprehensive coverage of the work that YAM and BFPA have been doing, and of course the challenges that have come up, because this certainly, as I said, this is not just here in Barbados, right? So this is a global phenomena, and certainly stuff that has been picked up with the global chatter and so on. So you've covered most of my questions that I had for you, but and listen to your discussion, I just need some clarification. Well, not clarification, but if you can paint a picture for us and the participants who are here with us today, what your community looks like, the the people that you work with, the young people that you work with. So first of all, your young members. So you said under 25, but I want to know if they also include the LGBT population, differently able population, that kind of thing. And then after that, to hear roughly the age groups and so on that you work with students and in schools.
Okay. Well, currently our members, we do have LGBTQ persons within our membership.
Great.
They're all under 25, as I said, because of the whole youth thing. Unfortunately, we don't have any differently abled persons within our membership. I think we used to at one point, a few years back, but then moved on. And unfortunately, we meet at the FPA, and the FPA isn't the most accessible when it comes to things like computers. Right.
Okay.
So perhaps when we move later on in the year, because we are moving, I'm not sure if you guys saw that article last year, but we are moving.
I had heard this.
Pardon?
Okay. No, I remember this conversation before COVID BC. So I wasn't sure.
Yes,
we are
so
that's
moving.
Great.
We are moving. So that building is more accessible. So hopefully more persons will be inclined to join and come once they can have access.
Can you say where? Can you say where right now or not as yet?
Yes. I can't remember what the area is called, but close to the Globe, where the old insurance building used to be, opposite. Shoot, I have no idea what that
is.
This
is Globe Drive-In?
Globe Cinema, the old Globe Cinema.
Cinema in town, okay.
Yes, so the old Globe Cinema, there's the gas station next to it, and the building, the blue building across the road from it.
Okay. All right, so we will look forward to hearing the official news of when you'll be moving. So hopefully then you will have your, you'll be able to be inclusive with other members of the community that can access services.
Yes.
But I just,
Right, no, I was saying in addition to the LGBTQ persons within our membership, we also are partnered with Equals Barbados. And they do sessions with us. They actually train us on certain things like gender and sexuality so that we can deliver it better. And like some of our members are members of Equals and vice versa. So it's a good partnership.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much for that, Kamal. The other question I wanted to ask, what age groups are you working with in the schools?
Right. So mostly our sessions go to first to third formers. That's generally the ones who request for us to come in to talk to. But we do sessions with all age groups, usually from 10 to 25. So this is class 4 to university. So, but generally it's first form, second form, third form. Those are usually the ones that we have.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for that. Now, I want to ask some questions. Let me know if this is, if this came up, working with young people, just in terms of during the lockdown, you know, there were disruptions with supply chains and getting contraceptives and other sexual health commodities, condoms, those sorts of things in. Is that something that the BFPA faced in terms of getting stockouts and having that experience with providing these services and unmet need of the population?
For sure. I can't speak specifically to the clinic because I know that there were some medications that they were trying to get that were taking a while. But I do know, specifically when it comes to contraceptives, that it took us a while to get back female condoms because for a while we only had like say 5 female condoms to do our outreaches and stuff like that with. So condoms were really difficult to get in, and we usually get those by shipment, and then the ships obviously weren't coming in at that time. So it was hard. But now we're back on track, so we have that. But it was an issue when it comes to supplies because obviously people come here for certain services. If people come here for condoms, we like to give them condoms. But obviously, if we are low on condoms, it'll be hard to distribute them at that time.
Right. Okay. And I want to remind the the attendees who are with us that you can post your questions in the Q&A chat pod, and we can get to them shortly, because time is heading on to 2 o'clock soon.
Um,
So I do have.
Right. So one of the things that you had mentioned in the beginning that I actually can mention now was in regards to things like GBV.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that.
Right. So we all know that Barbados is signatory on the UN Human Rights Convention. So we are lucky enough to have the global human rights. So things like rights to education, sexual health, and access. So during the pandemic, you can say that some of those rights were, I won't say violated in a sense, but it was difficult to get those kind of things. So that's one thing you can look at. And then there's the fact that I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but a lot of young people, their sense of solace was being able to leave home. So to go places, hang with friends, just to experience outside. Even introverts like to be outside at some point.
Yeah.
But then you're stuck in a situation where you are at home and all you know really for however long lockdown was is home. And then there's situations where your home life may be what you were trying to escape from to begin with.
Exactly.
And you have persons who experience gender-based violence looking forward to going places so they can get away from that home environment. But then now they're stuck at home in that environment in an increasingly difficult situation, because now you have a situation where maybe your partner isn't working and they're taking out their frustrations on you. So that's an additional stress and stuff to worry about. So it's hard when you think of it in that way as well. So it's not just thinking of the fact that I want to go outside, I'm a party, but there are people who literally use outside as an escape.
I mean, certainly that has come up in, all across the work that we've been doing from the very beginning. And it came up certainly in the 16 days of activism discussion that we had. That definitely came up, gender-based violence being exacerbated. And in the intro comments from International Association of Adolescent Health, the lockdowns and curfews really demonstrated that, young people, just as you just said, didn't have that escape route, didn't have that avenue to talk to supportive adults and to their peers who would give them support and care and love that they need.
Right.
So that's certainly, one of the concerning things that came up. And yeah, thank you for highlighting that as well, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you about too on the discussion, just as I told you before, I wanted to have it done, raised publicly. We are also having challenges too with thinking through a peer education program that can be delivered virtually, given that this is an academic institution and we're not teaching math or geography. No disrespect for the academic subjects, but it's not really conducive in terms of a pedagogical approach for us to be delivering informal educational strategies virtually. So this is what I wanted to hear from you, the different techniques that you have used, and just to, let the attendees know that our style has always been, as I said, informal, which includes a lot of role playing. So that's drama, a lot of singing, dancing, drawing. If anybody knows me, it's always drawing in it. And, group work and so on. And then we would go to the ranch to do conflict management training. So there's a lot of running around and falling down and all of that, a lot of games that we play, part of our pedagogical approaches, which of course we can't do. But we've been asked to revisit and to see how we can deliver this peer educator training virtually. So one of the things that have come up in my research and to see what has been happening globally there has been research done by SICAS. You familiar with SICAS?
No.
They're Sex Ed for Social Change.
Okay.
And they've been giving quite a few talks. One of the things that they highlighted in their research in the US, that, you know, there are issues around privacy. There's certain assumptions built into that everything can be done virtually, and it
Right.
can't, because as I said, it's not math, it's not geography or history. So it's not like you could just take notes. A lot of people have to really go through experiences, which they can't if they don't have privacy, right? So, and if they're locked down at home, and if they're in abusive spaces and environments that where they're being monitored, it can't be done, especially the way that we delivered it. So let's say that we're just going to do healthy relationships session virtually, but then it opens up a flood of emotions, maybe of abuse, and then we don't have that support system that we would have at the university, in a face-to-face environment, that we can pause and go outside and have consultations, a caucus, to break it down. So we don't have that. So that's kind of what I wanted to hear from you, how you were managing that session, and then, you know, to deliver the education outreach to the communities. So yes, everything again is being done virtually, but then again, built in that we are assumptions that people have access to devices that they can learn virtually, and again in spaces. So just access to technology, internet, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of things embedded in what has been asked of us to see how we can deliver peer education stuff, our training and education virtually.
So so a few things. So as you were speaking, because unfortunately it didn't even cross my mind regarding the potential of an emotional reaction to a session, how to actually respond to that virtually. Like, that actually never crossed my mind, and I'm glad you brought it up. So I know that Google Meet and Zoom have the ability, you can message privately. So perhaps there could be a way when you're doing a session to let the persons know that if there's any issue or something you may have, that you can send a private message to any of the hosts, and maybe you can have maybe that host can have a dialogue with them at the time to try to figure out a situation. Perhaps have them call, like actual physical calls, so you can have a discussion with them. That may be helpful. I'm not sure how effective it will be and en masse, like if there's a huge reaction to it. But that's one thing you could possibly look at.
Let me just pause on that. Okay, but thank you for that recommendation. First and foremost, yes, we might do the outside thing in consultation, but we're not counselors.
Right.
I made that very, very clear. We're educators, we're not counselors. The major, major difference. So then we will have that referral service on campus, to like the clinic for counseling services, or through the Office of Student Services. So yeah, I appreciate that we could do the breakouts then on the phone or on the side, or whoever, maybe one of the facilitators, and then I can take them one side. But again, I'm not a counselor, right? So that's also something that needs to be considered. But I do know that they are offering virtual counseling services. I would have to hear how that's going.
Yeah, BFBA has virtual counseling as well. So
Yeah.
So it works in that sense. Regarding the programming in itself, I've been told recently that Zoom has the ability to do breakout rooms on the app itself, right?
Yeah.
So I still have to practice that, but but that being the case, it's easier to break down a group and have a more interactive session that way, if you have the facilitators to do that. So that is also an option there. And we also were looking into Kahoot. You've heard of Kahoot?
No.
Okay, so Killian knows what Kahoot is. So Kahoot is a website and app where you can play games, different interactive methods when it comes to responding to questions. So you can actually take the information you get from Kahoot I used that to measure how they understood the session and stuff like that as well. And it's fun, it's colorful, has music. So it is a good way to interact.
So it's a good way to monitor how the delivery of the, okay.
Yeah. So there is, the thing about it is, the reason why we haven't implemented it as yet is because it has a basic package and it has a premium package. The basic package, while fun, the premium package offers a lot more that you would be more, you're more useful. They think the premium package was like $9 US or something like that. I can't remember, but yes, it works, and that is KAHOOT exclamation mark.
Awesome. Kamal, now that you've said that, we've tried Quiz. It's similar to Kahoot, but it offers the same features. So you could also take a look at that. We used that for our Valentine's online virtual quiz. So when you have time, you could also look at Quiz and compare the two and see which one would work better for you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much.
I'm not seeing any questions. So I have maybe a policy question, then Kamal, because a couple of things. I was looking at, you're aware that there's going to be a new youth policy?
Yes.
Right, okay. So, I mean, this seems to be very new. Like there's a new committee set up that I'm seeing. This is posted just 9th of last month. So a committee to draft, I imagine it would be to draft a new youth policy, right?
Yeah, they had a meeting about it yesterday, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah, so they met with different youth organizations to formulate how to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I was wondering if BFPA or any other sexual health organization that works with young people would be involved in this this committee to develop this new policy.
YAM was, thankfully.
Excellent. I'm really thrilled to hear that, because I was looking at the old policy, which is dated 2011. And have you seen it?
No.
Okay, so sexual health is mentioned in the context of HIV and AIDS education and the promotion of sexual abstinence. So that's under the lifestyle, healthy lifestyles part of the old youth policy. And I said, okay, well, that's dated, and I'm hoping that this will change soon. And then I discovered, thankfully, that there is going to be a new youth policy, and hopefully it will include comprehensive sexuality education and a much broader framework for looking at sexual and reproductive health and rights, and my favorite, reproductive justice.
Well, I know some of the persons who are involved, and I'm sure that they would bring that up. So
excellent. And then I want to ask then Kamal, in terms of a COVID response for sexual reproductive health, can you say if one was actually developed for Barbados?
An official COVID response?
Yeah.
I am honestly not sure.
Yeah. And I'm wondering then if young people at all were involved or could be involved in developing a national response for sexual reproductive health for young people. You know, because from where I sit, from the very beginning, this wasn't thought of. I guess people were automatically thinking about saving lives.
Yeah.
But you see, if they had the understanding from the very beginning that people have sex for very different reasons, and especially during crises, it certainly came up with 9/11, you know, people engage in sex for comfort, for security, that kind of thing. And so it's not only abusive, it's not only coercive, it's not just gender-based violence. There's also that aspect of it as well. So unfortunately, I think that was overlooked. But if we had to do it all over again and had to have, or let's say we have to go to our third lockdown, Kamal, what would you recommend then for young people? Or for, let's say, recommendations to the government in their response to young people and their sexual reproductive health and reproductive justice?
Well, considering that we've been trying to get our curriculum into schools to begin with, like part of a standardized school thing, I think that if we were able to have, if we had CSE as part of a school curriculum, it'd be taken a bit more seriously, because as I said earlier, they don't see it as a priority as it relates to things like math and geography and stuff like you mentioned. But if it is part of the curriculum, then it would be given that level of security when things come to lockdown, because it's part of the education. And if you think of it as a form of education, and the fact that education is a basic need and a basic right, then perhaps it would be taken a bit more seriously in that sense.
So sexuality.
Yes. So that would then lean into things like access and sexual behaviors as it would, learning that, understanding that it is a right, and as a right, you need to make it a priority. And it is on the hierarchy of needs. I'm pretty sure sex is at the base of the hierarchy of needs. Is like, yeah, it's a thing that is necessary. It's like not everybody does it, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and it's also a right. We want to really underscore that. And it suggests to me that we need to have maybe an S-Files discussion or another discussion, separate discussion on looking at CSE, how it's conceptualized, the content, if it includes LGBT rights and access to education, just to be themselves, as well as language around inclusion and not just exclusion and being demonic, that kind of thing, and HFLE to see where they fit within a framework of comprehensive sexuality education.
Yes.
Yeah, so any final remarks, because we are at the end. So I would, take any final remarks from you, Kamal.
Just thanks for being here. I'm glad that I was able to share this. I'm glad that we had this discussion. Yeah, thank you. That's about it. And everybody keep safe. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Kamal. And I'd like to thank Kamal for sharing their experiences at BFPA and YAM, as well as I'd like to thank Kelia and Samuel for providing some technical support. I guess we didn't get the video thing sorted, but that's okay, because we can.
Yes, we did. I had to, but you probably didn't see. Sammy has it lined up if we have time to show.
Oh yeah, I think we're under an hour. So because we did start exactly at 1. So if you have it, you can go with it.
Sammy, go ahead.
Hi, welcome to YAM Talks, where YAM talks about the things we talk about. And today we're talking about stress and stress management.
What is stress? It is our body's and mind's response to things that seem challenging to us. Some physical signs of stress are tensed muscles, headaches, and even poor eating and sleeping habits. The psychological or emotional symptoms of stress include low motivation, low self-esteem, or feeling overwhelmed or burnt out. These examples are typically the responses of negative stress, which we may be feeling from time to time during the pandemic.
So what can we do when the negative stress outweighs the positive stress in our lives? Well, we can take care of our basic needs, such as eating healthy, having good sleeping habits, and exercising. Or we can set aside time for relaxation, such as reading a good book, listening to music, or even meditating. Another way to combat negative stress is to talk about our problems, and so it is very important for us to reach out to a professional or a trusted friend when we recognize we need more help. Thank you for joining us. For more information, follow us on our social media. The links are found in our bio. Don't forget to like and share with your friends. Until next time, bye.
If anyone wanted to get in touch with them to, oh dear, my thing is blocking it, but it's Kamal at bfpaonline.com for his work email, and the number is up there. For any other information or about his program or how to get involved with YAM or with BFPA as well. And so thanks again, Kamal, for talking with us and to sharing your wonderful experiences, and also to Kelia and Samuel for your technical support, and for all the attendees who joined us today. Thank you so much, and please look out for our evaluation forms that will come to you shortly, and listen out for our other 2 digital dialogues. We have infertility next week and PCOS the following week. So you can join us for those discussions, and take care everyone and be safe.